Good morning, I'm Tim LaCrasse. Last week, the main attraction was the top two teams in the AFC, where the Colts were stunned late by the Patriots. This week, it's the NFC's turn when the Cowboys head to Jersey to take on the New York Giants. What team will take control of the NFC East and, more importantly, the NFC?
And I'm Pat McGuire. Your Lacey Lions wrapped up their regular season with a dominating win over Wall, with the Lions locked up the #2 seed in the Group 3 state playoffs. It's playoff time. We'll break it all down in the Lions Report.
Once again, good morning. You're watching This Week in Football. As always, I'm Tim LaCrasse, and this is Pat McGuire. Last week in the NFL, the Patriots came from behind late to beat the Colts. T.O. was the show in Philly as the Cowboys manhandled the Eagles, and the Jets lost again this time to the Redskins in overtime. However, before we discuss Week 10, Pat, the Lions, despite losing 2 games this year, are now the 2nd seed in the South Group 3 playoffs and will take on Delsey this week.
Well, Tim, it's great to be a Lion these days because the 2 losses seem like forever ago, and the way the Lions are playing now, everyone has to be excited heading into the state playoffs. Last week's win over Wall was a completely dominating effort by the Lions, and they really showed all of Group 3 what they are made of. I thought that it was the best overall game the Lions have played this entire season. Wall had 2 very good receivers, and the Lions had no problem shutting them down and taking them out of the game. The Lions' offense was also firing on all cylinders with both the passing and running game working to perfection. The game against Wall was a great opportunity for the Lions to show how good they really are, and every player really rose to the occasion to make a very loud statement. This weekend against Delsey, the Lions have a chance to get revenge on the Crusaders for beating them in the state final 2 seasons ago. With the way the Lions have been playing, they should have no problem this weekend, and I will be right here next week talking about their 2nd round matchup.
Well, let's discuss this ball game for a minute. I was not at the game. I talked to a few people who were at the game. They said this game wasn't as close as the score read, 29-7. Should not have even scored the touchdown. The Wall should not have, with a couple of penalties thrown, pass interference. That should not have been called.
Absolutely. I think, as I said, Tim, I think the Lions defense really showed how good they are. That was definitely the best defensive effort we've seen by the Lions all season. Wall was a good team. Wall was, ranked in the state, ranked very highly, thought to be a very good team. They're also in the state playoffs. But definitely, Wall is a good team, but the Lions really came out and had a dominating effort. As I said, definitely their best game so far this season.
Definitely something they needed to do to get to starting the week before the playoffs, get off on the right foot, get the momentum going in their favor this week against Delsey.
It was a perfect way to do that. I think the Lions are ready for Delsey. They know what Delsey has. They've seen the way this team plays before, as they did 2 years ago in the state finals. I think they know what to expect from this team. They're going to be prepared, and I think the Lions are going to come away with a victory.
Now, let's discuss the Delsey game 2 years ago. Lions go out 30-degree weather, play in Delsey High School. It's freezing. Randy Honeycutt probably had the worst game of his career, throwing a couple interceptions, just didn't get off the right foot.
It wasn't a good game for the Lions. I think the Lions were new to that situation before. They hadn't had a very successful team like that in a very long time. They had a rough season. They got very consistent as they went into the playoffs. They got hot, and they got lucky to be in the state championship. They learned their lesson that year, were able to come back last year and go 12-0 to win the state title. I think the Lions are much better prepared than they were 2 years ago, and I definitely think they'll take it to Delsey this week.
It's the 3rd time in the last 5 years that the Lions will be taking on Delsey in the playoffs. They lost to them in 2003 and 2 years ago, and now they're playing them again in the 1st round. We're now going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Pat and I will discuss the big games of Week 10 in the NFL.
What am I at? How many?
It's really soft. It's all in that too. What? I found it right.
Player was Ruckus hand. Oh yeah?
Yeah. Only bounce in the world amounts to love and for a wizard like me. Every bounce of the ball makes the whole world fall. In love with a wizard, with a wizard. In love with a wizard, with a wizard. In love with a wizard like me.
We here at WLTS hope every one of you will help the Harlem Wizards bounce out the stigma for epilepsy on November 16th. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. in the Lacey Township High School Gymnasium. Tickets are on sale in the Lacey High School main office and at Mill Pond School. Welcome back to This Week in Football. Our first game is between the 3-5 Philadelphia Eagles and the 5-3 Washington Redskins. Pat, I'll make it a very simple one for you this week. Last week, Donovan McNabb fumbled the first play of the game, which led to a Cowboys touchdown and a Cowboys victory. The Bluebirds were out for his throat. Will Donovan McNabb be the quarterback of the Eagles next year or even the rest of this year?
Oh, Tim, I don't know, but this is definitely, I don't know if this will be it for Donovan McNabb, but he is certainly running out of chances. He needs to show some signs of still being able to play, or the fans in Philly are really going to be calling for his replacement. That fumble on the first play last week really said a lot about how much Donovan McNabb may not have what it takes to really lead the Eagles to victory and how much he actually may be hurting them. The Redskins also struggled last week, needing overtime to beat a horrific Jets team and still need to show that they are better than the blowout they suffered against the Patriots 2 weeks ago. The Eagles will be 4-5 with a win today, but I don't think it's very likely that they will get the victory. The Redskins might not be that good, but they should be good enough to get past the Eagles.
All right, going into this year, did you think, or did anybody think, the Eagles are going to be 3-5 playing the Redskins this week?
I don't think that people thought the Eagles would be this bad. I think they knew the Eagles weren't going to be great. They knew the Eagles weren't going to be the team that they were last year, even 2 years ago. They knew that the Cowboys were the class of the NFC East, but I think they expect the Eagles to be right there and be in the race, especially at this point in the season. I think as the season progressed, maybe they thought that the Eagles would lose pace a little bit and the Cowboys would dominate, but I don't think anybody expected the Eagles to be 3-5. They have not played well. I think they really show how the lack of weapons they have on offense has really cost them. Really, all they have is Donovan McNabb and Brian Westbrook. The receivers have not played well, and Donovan McNabb has not played well, so it's really prevented them. 3-5, I think, is actually better than the way they've played. They have not played in good games this season, so I think they're very lucky to be at 3-5.
Let's talk about Andy Reid for a second. Going into this year, he took some time off, a leave of absence, right before the draft last year, because to sort out some family issues, his 2 sons were arrested. Supposedly 23 months in jail for each of them. Now he takes Thursday off for the same exact reason for a court hearing. His house was searched, drugs found because of his kids. Is his mind on the Philadelphia Eagles right now, or is he just not there right now?
Well, I think it's very tough for him to have his mind completely on the Eagles when a lot of stuff's going on in his personal life, and I think it puts the Eagles in a very tough position. What do you do with a coach like that? He's been so successful with the franchise and helped that team go so far in such a short amount of time. You have to cut him a couple of breaks because he's been so loyal to the team and helped them out so much. But as far as the family issues go, maybe Andy Reid does need to take time off or does need to resign and get everything back on track, and then he can come back to coaching. But I definitely think if the Eagles have to make a choice, they'd go with Don McNabb before letting go of Andy Reid.
All right, the Skins are 5-3. Again, a surpriser. Not everybody thought Jason Campbell was going to be able to hold this team together in a way to get them winning. Cooley's doing a good job at fullback and tight end. What's up with the Redskins?
I think 5-3. I think as the Eagles are lucky to be 3-5. I also think the Redskins are lucky to be at 5-3. I think they got a bunch of wins early in the season over teams that really aren't very good, don't have really good records now. And I think we saw against the Patriots how much and how bad the Redskins can really be beat and how bad they really are. So I don't believe this 5-3 record. I think they're going to stay at mediocrity the rest of the season. Maybe finish at 8-8, maybe 9-7 if they're lucky. But I don't see this team really being a contender.
They're going to have a tough time. They have the Giants coming up, the Cowboys next week, especially if the Cowboys beat the Giants this week. They'll be rolling, and the Redskins are just going to, I think the 5-3, they can kiss it goodbye.
Well, Tim, if you don't know by now, the Green Bay Packers are 7-1 and right at the top of the NFC. The Packers' defense has been the surprise defense in the league, but today they face record breaker Adrian Peterson, who ran for 296 yards last week, setting the single-game rushing record. Does Adrian Peterson have an encore performance today, or does Brett Favre lead the Packers to another victory?
Well, I think the 296 yards last week was overlooked because of another play we'll discuss later. But I do think Adrian Peterson's record-breaking performances, the Vikings still don't have a good football team. They have way too many weaknesses, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They need a better quarterback and maybe some more receivers who can make plays when Peterson is either on the sideline or having a bad game. Now, the Packers have a good football team. Coming into the year, I had them very low on the totem pole because, let's face it, Brett Favre is old. He has, however, proven me wrong. He has led the Packers to a 7-1 start, and I expect the Packers-Cowboys game next month to be a preview of the NFC Championship game, barring a Cowboy meltdown. The Packers will win this game outright, and Adrian Peterson will statistically have a bad game.
Well, Tim, as you just said now, Adrian Peterson, you're predicting to have a bad game this week. Let's talk about his performance last week. There 296 yards, 253 in the second half. What makes Adrian Peterson such a good runner, and will he be able to continue this, and will he ever repeat or have a better performance.
Well, you said it, 253 yards in the second half. He doesn't run the ball a lot in the first half. They have Chester Taylor runs it in the first half, really wears down the defensive line, and then Adrian Peterson comes and finishes the game. Kind of similar to what the Cowboys do with Julius Jones and Marion Barber. Marion Barber is the second half back, then Julius Jones wears the defensive line down in the first half. That's just how it is.
Now, how serious are the Packers in contention in the NFC? As you said, will this team be in the NFC Championship game? And if they do go to the Super Bowl, can they compete with any team in the AFC? How good are the Packers really?
I think it all depends on how Brett Favre plays. If Brett Favre has a spectacular game and he makes the throws from his back foot to throw a touchdown pass, sure, the Packers are a good football team. But if it comes down to the trenches, where it's going to have to be the running game that makes the big play, and the defensive line's going to have to make a couple of stops, I don't know how good they are, because they just haven't played a team that's going to take them down the wire like that.
Now, we saw last year the Packers didn't have a good season, but towards the end they went on that 4-game winning streak, kind of closed the season real hot, and this season they've started off really well, as we said, 7-1. What has been the difference for this Packers team this season?
The Packers, I think it's just that Brett Favre is rejuvenated. Sure, he's going to have that same, is he going to have a one-year contract next year? Is he going to come back? But I think this time he really wanted to come back, really prove everybody that he can still be a starting quarterback, and that's just been his factor. He wanted to prove all the critics wrong when the Packers signed him again or when he came back. Now, and he's really doing a great job doing it.
Now, the Vikings are at 3-5. They have Adrian Peterson. We know how good he is. Where do they go from here? What can they expect for the rest of the season and going into next year?
I think they're going to stay about a 6-10 team, 7-9 team. They're not that good. In the future, when they have a better offensive team besides Adrian Peterson, that is when they're really going to do a good job and really start taking control of the NFC North. We're going to take one more commercial break. When we come back, the rest of Week 10 plus the WLTS awards.
See it, then do it. Move the mics.
Welcome back to This Week in Football. Our next game is between the 7-1 Colts and the 4-4 Chargers. Pat, with the Colts coming off that stunning late loss to the Patriots and the Chargers coming off a loss to the Vikings where their defense just got pummeled by Adrian Peterson, what did the Chargers have to do to beat the 7-1 Colts?
Well, Tim, for one thing, I think we had to see a major improvement in the run defense of the Chargers after they allowed the performance we just talked about by Adrian Peterson. Beyond that, I'm not giving them much of a chance. Peyton Manning and the Colts will be looking to get right back on track after the loss to the Patriots last week. I don't think there's a question that the Colts will come out and completely dominate today. A year ago, this would have been a huge AFC matchup, but the Chargers have failed to live up to the expectations that were put on them at the start of the season. LaDainian Tomlinson has not had the MVP caliber year, and the addition of receiver Chris Chambers has had little effect so far. The Colts should have no problem getting the victory today, and I think they really put themselves back on top of the AFC.
The Charger game last week against the Vikings, I thought Adrian Peterson's record was overlooked because of that 109-yard field goal return for a touchdown.
That was a fabulous game. That was a fabulous return. We saw it last year with Devin Hester run back the 108-yard field goal for a touchdown. I think the run by the Chargers this year, 109 yards, amazing play. Definitely one of the top plays of the year. I love when that happens. I love to see guys change the game like that. That was a game-changing play at the time. It was really unfortunate that the Chargers couldn't get the win after that amazing play, but definitely the 109-yard record, a good record.
You'd think it's pretty easy because everybody said on a field goal like that, when you return it, you'll always go towards your own sideline because on the field goal unit, it's mostly big linemen who aren't going to run down the field. They usually run over to their sideline first and cover that side. And obviously, Chargers knew that and ran up the Chargers sideline. Now let's talk about North Turner's play calling. He just not doing a good job. Phillip Rivers is not the type of quarterback has to be making 40 throws. You got arguably the best running back in probably NFL history, and he's not getting the ball. He had to carry the ball for 14 carries last week.
North Turner definitely has to be questioned at this point. The last year Chargers were 10-2. This team really hasn't changed much. Maybe improved with the addition of Chris Chambers. But we still haven't. We've seen a negative result. Different things happen. But Daniel Thompson is not getting the ball enough. We saw countless number of times last year how he would change a game with 1 or 2 plays, and that was really the difference for the Chargers. But when he's not getting the ball, he can't make plays. He can't change the game. So I think North Turner really trying to rely on the passing game has hurt the Chargers. They need to give the ball to Daniel Thompson more if they want to be in contention going into the final stretch of the season.
Do you think the Chargers front office is really kicking themselves right now for firing Marty Schottenheimer?
Absolutely. Marty Schottenheimer did a great job with this team. It was just unfortunate they didn't win the playoffs, and I think they're only a year or 2 away. I think if they had the same success this year, maybe not had such a good season and maybe been humbled a little bit, they would have known their mistakes going into the playoffs and able to play better. I don't think it was Marty Schottenheimer's fault they lost in the playoffs. That team was an excellent team last year, and North Turner has not done a good job so far this season.
Why is Philip Rivers still throwing the football?
He's a good quarterback, Tim. I think he plays hard. They have a couple of weapons at receiver, but you're absolutely right. We've mentioned a couple times now, Daniel Thompson needs to get the ball more. Philip Rivers is throwing way too much, and he's been patient, but he's still making a lot of mistakes, throwing a couple interceptions. So he hasn't had a good season for how many times been able to throw the ball.
Did the Colts really win a game against the Patriots last week?
I think that really it showed that the winner of this game didn't really matter. I think if we were to play this game again this week, I think it could go the Colts' way, and it could go either way. These teams showed they are the top 2 teams in the AFC, and whatever time they face, it doesn't really matter what happened. It's going to be 1 or 2 plays that change the game, and one team has to come on top, so one team will. But I think the Colts really showed that they are better than people really think that they are, and that they can contend with the Patriots. Tim, our final game is the biggest game of the week and will determine the NFC supremacy going into the final stretch. Tony Romo and the Dallas Cowboys match up with Michael Strahan and the New York Giants, winners of 6 in a row. Dallas won the first game of the rivalry, but will they do it again this week, or is this time the Giants' turn to get the victory?
Pat, I think Cowboy owner Jerry Jones said it perfectly on Sportsnet New York. The Cowboys are a great football team. Though their defensive backs hurt them a little bit, they're still one of the few complete teams in the NFC. However, the Giants are the hottest team in the league right now going into their bye week last week. They just got by the Dolphins in London 2 weeks ago. But as I've said from the beginning of this show last year, good teams find ways to win, and boy, did they find a way to win. This will be a game for the ages. Tony Romo is off of a big contract and a big game against Philly, and T.O. finally got involved early and often like Jason Garrett promised he would. And the defense is the hottest part of this team. Jason Witten will have to play a big role this week in controlling the middle of the field for the Cowboys offense. Now for the Giants, their defense will have to apply the pressure to force errant passes from Tony Romo. If they can't do that, they will have a problem. This one comes down to the wire, but I think it's too close to call.
It's definitely going to be a great game, similar to the Colts-Patriots game last week. Then this time it involves 2 NFC teams. Oh, Tim, let's go to the WLTS awards. So, Tim, who do your awards go to this week?
Well, my MVP goes to Terrell Owens. He got involved early and often, 170-something yards, a 45-yard touchdown reception. He really put it to the Eagles' defense, and he said from the beginning that he wants to play good in Philadelphia. You saw him doing the Eagle wave when he scored his 45-yard touchdown, singing, doing the songs and everything, and he was just having a blast, and it's about time. Now, my least valuable player goes to North Turner. Bad play calling led to another Charger loss. He's got to start putting the ball in LaDainian Tomlinson's hands and start pulling the ball away from Philip Rivers. Who do your awards go to?
Well, Tim, my MVP has to go to Adrian Peterson. The performance he had last week was spectacular. 253 yards in the second half was amazing. It was an amazing second half to watch. The other Chargers could not tackle him. He played excellently well. I'd also like to give a shout-out to the Lacey boys cross-country team last weekend. They placed 4th in the South Jersey Group 3 state championship. First time in school history a team has done that, and the first time the school will be advancing to the state sectional finals. The team is led by Roger Hopper, Phil Wood, Tom Pearson, and the Calicerdo twins of Joe and Anthony. They had a great season this year, and good luck in the state finals.
Well, that'll just about do it for us here on This Week in Football. A nice cross-country shout-out. Who do your last comments go to?
Oh, Tim, playoff times here at the high school for the Lions. Going to be very exciting going. Facing Delsey at home this week. Going to be a great game, a great atmosphere. Everyone's looking forward to it. Lions should come away with the victory.
Cowboys and Giants Sunday on Fox. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman. It's going to be a pretty dandy game up in East Rutherford Giants Stadium. Tony Romo's got to get the ball to T.O. and Jason Witten, and the defensive line led by Michael Strand and UC Muir got to perform very well if the Giants want to get a win. So for Pat McGuire, I'm Tim LaCrasse. Happy Sunday, Lacey Township, and enjoy the games.